Okay,
So
Rabbi.
we're basically studying about the twins, the twin brothers, Yaakov and Esau, and what they shared and what they argued about, and what they fought over, and what they disagreed. So, what really is the story? What are we being told? He was physically the first. Esau was physically born first. Yaakov is hanging on to his heel. Yaakov wants the rights of the firstborn. He buys it from him for a bowl of soup, and now Esau is upset, and Yaakov gets all the blessings because he pretends to be Esau, and now Esau is even more upset, and Rivka, his mother, uh, favors Yaakov, and Yitzchak, his father, Isaac favors Esau. Complicated story, like a soap opera.
Right.
But what really is going on? Why do we need to know any of this? Of course, we can always extract some lesson, but really, why do we need to know the story? What is so significant about the the history or the two different positions that Yaakov and Esau held? So, if we want to understand it properly, if it's a story in the Torah, it must be one of eternal significance and truth. It can't just be a little incident in history, because then the Torah would be 10 times longer and greater than it is if you're just recording incidents. Every story has to have some eternal divine message. So let's see if we can get a little deeper into the story. They're not arguing about themselves. If this is a petty family squabble, sibling rivalry, the Torah wouldn't bother telling us the story. It's recorded in the Torah because there is something profound going on here that we would never understand or appreciate without the Torah telling us. So they're not arguing about themselves. Even Esau, he's kind of the bad guy, but he's not an ordinary human being. He's not just a bad guy. History is full of those people. What they're arguing about is the approach to the ultimate perfection. How do we reach the ultimate, the realization of the ultimate truth and the ultimate perfection of creation? Now there's a subject worth arguing over, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the difference between them is this. Yaakov wants the process of human development from the ordinary to the godly to be an internal, integrated, personally challenging procedure. He wants the human being to actually transform from within, meaning by their own strength, by their own effort, and uh, by their own talent, until the ordinary becomes godly. Esav, on the other hand, thinks we're not going to do it. We can't do it from within, because inwardly we're just too human. We're too bogged down with our human frailties and limitations. If the world is going to become perfect, it's got to come from above.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily in a miraculous. The miraculous certainly would not work, because if God is going to miraculously make the world perfect, then what is he waiting for?
Right. He doesn't need our help for that.
Yeah, and doesn't need time.
Right.
So it's been thousands of years. What are we waiting for? If in the end there's going to be a miracle, you could have done that thousands of years ago. So obviously, we're going through an internal process at a human rate, and that takes thousands of years. But Esau was a bit impatient, and he thought we could make it happen quickly by overlooking the human condition, transcending the human condition, because it's never going to become good. So we got to bring in some other, heavy artillery that's going to make the process much quicker, but not very thorough. That's what they were arguing about. So Esau claimed, I'm the firstborn, my way of doing it is the right way. Yaakov said, I'm the firstborn spiritually. So when it comes to spiritual matters, you got to listen to me. So one of the conversations that these two sides of the argument becomes a little apparent when they finally meet after all these years. Esau says, "Come, let's go together. Let's proceed together." Meaning, the world is ready to be perfect. We can make peace now. We can unite the whole world, and that's it. We've achieved perfection. We have redeemed creation. Because he thought it could happen that quickly if you just ignore some human frailties or conditions.
I have a question when you have a moment.
Okay? And Yaakov says, no, you go ahead. I have tender sheep. We have to go slow. So you see, there is the difference. Yeah.
So my question is, in general, with the story of Jacob and Esau with Yitzhak, my curiosity would run as far as to say, how could two brothers be raised under the same family and still be so diametrically opposite from each other in so many ways? And furthermore, how does that mean that with parenting skills, for example, if you have kids that are like diametrically opposed in as far as Torah and not Torah, if you want to look at it that way, to what level are we accountable for being involved? Like, I mean, I don't see anything in the text of Tanakh that suggests that that Esau was guided one way or the other. It was just like, this is how he was, and this is how he was, and this was the outcome of the story. So what can we deduce from this whole thing?
Well, first of all, if the story sounds too common, too banal, then we're not understanding it.
Okay.
Now, we're told, and for a good reason, that the difference between them began at birth. It was not nurture, it was nature.
Okay.
So that even before they were born, they were already disagreeing with each other.
Right, got it.
Right? So even in the womb, there was disturbance between them. But really, it's not that surprising that two brothers, even twins, can be that different, because within each of us, there are two so diametrically opposed impulses. The desire to be selfish and petty, and the desire to be noble and idealistic.
Right.
We all carry those two sides. And it's just one person. So certainly two brothers can embody these two sides. Interestingly, that Yitzchak favored Esau, meaning to say, he thought Esau was right.
Oh.
But that's because he was ready for the world's perfection, because from his perspective, from his point of view, he was ready. And when Esau said, I'm ready, he thought, wow, great. Rivka, on the other hand, was a little more realistic about the condition of the world, and she was saying, of course, Yitzchak is ready. He's a tzaddik. He's always been ready. and he thinks everybody's as great as him. But no, that's not really the case. So you have to go with Jacob's approach, because the world has a lot of catching up to do, and it's going to be a while before the world reaches its perfection.
Okay.
So if we start with this premise, then all the details and all the stories fall into place, and they now have a theme. It's not just brothers disagreeing on everything because they just don't like each other. That would be the common experience.
Right.
But these were not ordinary people. Esau was not an ordinary person.
So are you saying that Esau himself was a borderline Tzaddik himself? Is that why Yitzhak favored him? Is that what I don't really understand that, I guess.
I'm not sure that we would call him a borderline tzaddik. He was a very spiritual person, no question about that. But somehow in his spiritual vision, he was off. He was out of step. But we're also told that eventually Esau, his descendants, even his philosophy will be redeemed. In other words, it will be true. He was just pushing the envelope a little too quickly because he wasn't as thorough in his approach to holiness.
What was the envelope what was his agenda? Because I'm kind of unclear on the text. I know the Midrash teaches a lot on it, but what was Esau's agenda?
Esau's agenda was, let's make the world perfect. Let's bring heaven down to earth, and we will have redeemed the world. But his model, his vision of heaven coming down to earth was more like cover nature with a layer of holiness, and it's done. It'll all look good, it'll all function well, and it will be perfect on the surface. Jacob was saying, that can't last. If we're going to change the world, it's got to be from within, from the bottom up. That takes time. Coating it with holiness is not God's plan. So there are ways in which we can kind of gloss over the evil and favor the good and the holy, but you're not transforming anything. And so it's going to be short-lived. The facade will fall off. So it is a holy facade. See, that's why we can't just dismiss him as a bad guy.
Okay.
And that's also why, in the end, what he envisioned will happen, but not at the pace and not in the method that he was advocating. So in the end, the descendants of Esau do get redeemed and become part of the perfection of the world. But he has to admit that Yaakov's method is the correct one. That's why he has to give up the firstborn privilege and admit that Yaakov has the right idea.
So I almost see like these two kids, they're twins, but their maturity level, the spiritual maturity level, is like the difference between an 8-year-old or 6-year-old versus someone who's in college and on the spiritual plane. Like all this 6-year-old thinks is, okay, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be rich and I'm going to take care of my family. But in reality, you're not just going to be rich. You're going to have to work hard to get there. There's a lot of steps from point A to Z to get there to make that happen. But he didn't see that. He just thought it was going to be a simple solution. So it almost makes it look like on that spiritual plane where Jacob was definitely way more mature on it than Esau. But what you're saying, that doesn't make Esau a bad guy.
Correct.
Okay.
In fact, there's something appealing about his approach. If you make the argument, we can't wait that long. How long has it been since they disagreed on this issue? 4,000 years?
Right.
We can't wait that long. So, fine, we're going to have to sacrifice a little something and not be so thorough, but let's get it done. Yeah, it's an appealing argument,
Hmm.
especially if you're a little impatient.
Right. Interesting.
So one of the descendants, one of the children of Esau, is Rome, meaning the Western world, Western philosophy, Western religion. That's Rome. And in the end of history, Rome will be part of the redemption of the world because they will adopt the Yaakov's method. And that's what Yaakov was wrestling with the angel that represented Esau. They were fighting it out. Which way are we going to go? And Esau, the angel of Esau, eventually agreed or submitted to Yaakov's approach. So Yaakov won the wrestling match. But it was really an ideological fight. I mean, obviously, he's fighting with an angel.
Right, right.
Let's go a little deeper than that.
Okay.
There are people who succeed by force of determination or passion. If you have a really strong passion to get it done, whatever it is, whether it's social or personal or economic or political, if you have a really strong passion, you get it done. But how does it get done? By the force of passion or determination or just power. You can power it through. You can force it through. You can make it happen simply because you're so intense. Now the results are also going to be intense. It's going to be powerful. You know, people run a business and they're so passionate about it. It's impressive. It gets done. It's awesome. It's huge. It's overwhelming. It sweeps people up in its path, and it looks like it's the ultimate. There's really little you can criticize.
Right.
But give it some time and see what happens. It overpowered the system. As soon as this passion calms down, or without this leader with the passion, if he's not there, the next generation, everything falls apart.
At what point in Esau's walk did his spiritual journey take a permanent decline? I mean, because there's all the stories we hear as time matured. You know, it seems like everything. I wouldn't say every decision he made was bad, because whenever he and Yaakov met on the path, you know, whenever he had his 400 men, he didn't start war with them, so I couldn't say he did a bad or evil thing there. But I mean, it doesn't really show us that Esau made his way back to Torah, in a sense of things. Was there?
No,
do you think there was a certain point in his decision making skills that kind of set that path on a permanent directory?
That's a good observation. There's no mention anywhere that Esau turned around and became good, but also there's no mention of him doing anything bad.
Right.
What did he do? Guzzle some soup?
Right. That's funny. Well, you know, one of the Midrashim did say something about what one opinion was when he said he was out hunting, that he was actually headhunting, that he was actually out trying to kill people. So I don't know how legit that is, or how many are for that or against it. And then later on, and it may not have been in the Midrash, it might have been somewhere like in the Book of Enoch or something, which probably it may or may not be supported by Judaism, but it says that at some point Esau was decapitated and his head had rolled into the tomb of his ancestors. So I'm not really sure about all that. But
there you go. So that tells you that some part of Esau was redeemed.
mm-hmm.
Therefore, he gets to be buried with the patriarchs.
Interesting. Very nice. Yeah.
But the main thing is his descendants.
Okay.
The evil and then the redemption, the tshuva, is in his descendants. They quickly went bad. Like Rome
Right.
destroyed the temple. That's, that's a no-no.
Yeah. Okay, here's another question for you. I mean, this is stirring up all these questions now. Okay, so Rachel and Leah. So it was said that Rachel was supposed to marry Jacob and Leah was supposed to marry Esau. Why would she be so distraught by knowing that she was going to be bound to marry Esau if, in fact, he wasn't really a bad guy?
Good question. This is called learning. I love it. The good questions that force good answers.
Yes, sir.
Like we're saying, Esau had a very good idea, very good intentions. He thought that passion can carry the day, and if you really want it badly enough, you just make it happen and turn everything around. In the end, he has to do tshuva. The difference between Rachel and Leah, Rachel was good looking and Leah was weepy. The difference is when you're doing tshuva, when you have to repent, when you have to change course, it brings tears. There's regret, there's repentance, there's tears. It's a painful journey. As positive as it is, you get there through tears. Mm-hmm. So the fact that she, is it that she was going to marry Esau and that's why she cried? Or because she cried, she was a good match for Esau? In other words, her path was also one of repenting. You fix the world by repenting, by regretting, by uprooting all the negative and rejecting it. Whereas the tzaddik, rather than the Baal Tshuva, the tzaddik has a very pleasant, straight, godly path that doesn't involve tears. Mm-hmm. Not that they don't suffer and experience reasons for crying, but that's not their spiritual path. That's what's getting in the way of their spiritual path. So the question of why do the righteous suffer? They suffer external causes for pain. It's not their godly path to use tears as a means of purifying the world. Whereas the Baal Tshuva, the tears are part of their spirituality. The tears are their way of refining the world. Because if you cry over the evil, it softens the evil. It makes it a little more godly. So these are the two ways. Esau had a very powerful idea, but he's going to have to regret it, repent it, and fix it, which contributes to the perfection of the world.
Okay.
But Yaakov's approach was, yes, you can force it, you can push it, and that's powerful, and it will have a powerful effect on the world. Again, like any project, if you're very, very passionate about something, you make it happen. Great things happen. You can build empires on it. But as soon as the passion is gone, it all crumbles.
Right.
Yaakov says, passion isn't going to get you there. It'll create a wow, but that's not transformational. Mm-hmm. You got to go slow, educate one person at a time, make sure that they really get it, internalize it. It's not a show. It's not, there's no hype. No forcing, no pushing. Get the system to really transform into a godly way of living.
It sounds like you're giving great marriage counseling right now is what it sounds like. That's exactly what it sounds like.
That's a good observation.
I mean,
a guy who comes in for marriage counseling says, I got to get my marriage back. I want to fix everything. Yeah, your passion's great, but it isn't going to get you there.
right.
Shalom Aleichem. How are you? I do a lot of talking, a lot of Zooming, many classes, many subjects, but that's all formal stuff. Hopefully good stuff, but formal. We also have a Wednesday night meeting that's more informal and kind of Hamish. If you want to join us for that kind of an event, interactive, time for questions and so on. If you want to join us for this side of conversation, click on the link below and join us every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. Well, maybe not every Wednesday night, but we try to make it every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, a more informal chat, which can be more enjoyable at times than the formal stuff. So check it out. Click on the link and join us. Try it. You'll like it.